What secret lies in the red glow of Mars as it drifts across the darkened sky? For millennia it has been the wanderer, the planet of omen and unrest. Its crimson light a symbol of war and warning. Against the still canvas of space it burns quietly as if waiting. Beyond the familiar reach of our sun, silence was once thought to be absolute. Yet silence is never permanent. From the black between stars a fragment emerged. It was not born here, not shaped by our star's fire. It was 3I Atlas, a visitor from another system, carrying with it the unspoken story of a world we will never see. Its trajectory was no idle path. With precise inevitability, its arc swept past the orbit of Mars, too close for comfort, too exact to ignore. Was this nothing more than celestial chance, a random stone tossed across the void? Or did the planet of war stand waiting like a sentinel, as if chosen to bear witness to the passing of an alien messenger? In myth, Mars was the god who watched over battlefields. In the heavens, it now stood in quiet vigil as the unknown brushed by. The thought stirs unease. How many of these fragments wander unseen, and why do some find their way to our skies? The red planet lingers, caught between history and prophecy, between science and story. The question remains like an echo in the dark. Is Mars only an obstacle in the path of interstellar debris? Or has it always been the destination? In the long history of astronomy, most discoveries arrive quietly, a flicker of light on a detector, a moving point against the background of stars, nothing more than a faint signal in the noise of the cosmos. Yet sometimes those faint signals carry messages that change everything. In 2017, humanity received the first of these messages. It was named Oumuamua, meaning a messenger from afar arriving first in Hawaiian. Its orbit left no doubt. It was not tied to the sun. It had come from beyond and would return beyond. Its shape was never seen clearly, only inferred. Some models suggested a cigar, stretched thin and tumbling. Others argued for a flattened shard, a pancake-like fragment. Its brightness flickered erratically, as if sunlight played across uneven surfaces. It gave off no visible gas, no tail of dust like a comet. But its motion betrayed a subtle push, as though some invisible force carried it. Scientists debated whether this was the release of hidden ices or something stranger still. 2 years later, another messenger appeared, this one more familiar. Comet 2I Borisov blazed with the unmistakable halo of gas and dust. It was a comet in every way but origin. Its path traced back beyond the solar frontier, a visitor from another sun. Discovered not by the world's largest observatories but by an amateur astronomer, Gennady Borisov, scanning the skies from Crimea. His modest telescope revealed something profound. The universe was not silent. Other star systems cast their fragments outward, and every so often one drifted into our own. For centuries, the night sky had seemed unchanging. Stars wheeled in patient arcs. Planets wandered with predictable grace. But now, in the brief span of 3 years, 2 interstellar visitors had passed through. They were not myths, not symbols, but real. And if 2 could appear so quickly, there must be countless others. Humanity had simply never looked closely enough. The pattern deepened in 2020. The Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, ATLAS, was built with a singular mission: to search for small near-Earth asteroids that could threaten our planet. Its twin telescopes in Hawaii swept the heavens each night, covering thousands of square degrees of sky, capturing millions of stars and the faint streaks of wandering bodies. Its software compared images, flagging motion against the background. Most nights the alerts were routine: small asteroids, faint comets, nothing unusual. But in the spring of that year, as Earth turned inward to face a global crisis, Atlas looked outward. On those dark nights it recorded a faint moving light. At first it was logged as another cometary object, small, icy, reflecting the sun. But as astronomers refined its orbit, strangeness emerged. Its speed was too great, its trajectory too wide. The numbers revealed the truth. This was no native of the solar system. Like Oumuamua and Borisov, it had crossed the gulf between stars. It was given the name 3I Atlas, the third interstellar object known to science. The discovery rippled through the astronomical community. Observatories across the globe pivoted, turning their instruments toward the faint visitor. From Chile's deserts to space-based platforms, telescopes began to gather every possible photon. Each observation narrowed the uncertainties, sharpening the orbit. Slowly, the path revealed itself, and as it did, another layer of unease surfaced. Projected forward, the trajectory brushed past Mars. Not a direct collision, not even a close flyby by human standards, but close enough to make the planet more than a silent bystander. In the precise mathematics of orbital mechanics, the alignment was unsettling. Of all the vast orbits it could have taken, 3I Atlas passed in the neighborhood of the red planet. For astronomers, such coincidences are expected. Celestial mechanics is full of near passes and resonances. Yet the symbolism could not be ignored. Mars, long regarded as the god of war, the omen of change, stood silently as a witness to a fragment from another sun. Even the way it was discovered carried a sense of inevitability. Atlas was not searching for alien messengers. It was scanning for rocks that could endanger Earth. And in its vigilance, it had caught sight of a traveler from interstellar space, a reminder that the dangers of the cosmos are matched only by its mysteries. The astronomers themselves became part of the story. Names like John Tonry and Larry Deno, who had spearheaded the Atlas project, watched their system do exactly what it was designed to do. Not merely to protect Earth, but to remind humanity that it is part of a larger unfolding story in the universe. The software they built to save lives had stumbled upon something far older, far grander, a shard of another system, a relic of unknown worlds, threading its way past Mars. In orbital plots, the solar system is rendered as circles and ellipses, color-coded paths weaving around the sun. Against this familiar order, Atlas appears as a foreign curve, slicing through with a direction and velocity that do not belong, a ghost orbit, cutting across the planetary family. Its line draped uncomfortably near the orbit of Mars as if the red planet had been chosen to watch. To the scientific mind, it was chance. To the human imagination, it was something else. Coincidence and omen are often separated only by perspective. When the ancients saw Mars burning red in the night, they believed it foretold war. Now, in the age of telescopes and data, a fragment from beyond seemed to whisper in the same direction. The arrival of 3I Atlas raised questions that linger still. How many of these objects cross unseen? How many have brushed near Earth without notice? And why did the third recorded visitor trace its arc beside the most storied planet of all? The Red Wanderer stood silent, offering no answers. Only a reminder. The solar system is not closed. It is not isolated. It is open to the currents of the galaxy, and in those currents drift ancient messengers, carrying with them the forgotten histories of other suns. When astronomers first traced the arc of 3I Atlas across the heavens, they expected familiarity. Interstellar or not, a comet was supposed to behave like a comet, a frozen relic of another star system, slowly warming as sunlight pulled gas and dust into a halo, a nucleus hidden at the center, intact and defiant. But what they saw unsettled even the most disciplined minds. The light it cast was unstable. Unlike Borisov, whose cometary tale bloomed with textbook elegance, Atlas shimmered with inconsistency. Its brightness rose, then faltered, then rose again, as though its body was not whole. Photometric studies suggested fragmentation, not one nucleus but many, unraveling like brittle stone cracked by invisible forces. At times it seemed to dim more quickly than a stable comet should, as if material was escaping in sudden bursts. Some astronomers compared it to a dying ember, flickering in the vacuum. Others noted that its glow bore the strange cadence of something coming apart piece by piece. Its orbit, too, carried strangeness. A hyperbolic path, yes, like the other interstellar visitors, but its precise orientation carried a signature that seemed too sharp, too exact. Not bound to the familiar families of comets catalogued in human records, it had no kinship with the Oort cloud, no place among the long-period comets that orbit the sun like distant ghosts. This one came from nowhere humanity could name, a direction in interstellar space where no parent star could yet be identified. And then came Mars orbital models refined by observatories around the world, confirmed the eerie geometry. 3I Atlas would sweep close to the path of the red planet. Not a collision, not even what planetary scientists would call a near miss, yet close enough that Mars would share its space, if only briefly, with a body from another sun. The news rippled outward. To the public, it carried an echo of mythology. Mars, the omen of war, crossed by a messenger from beyond. To the scientific community, it was no less jarring. They had already been shaken by Oumuamua in 2017, an object that bent the rules of physics with its unexplained acceleration. They had studied Borisov in 2019, which at least behaved like a comet, validating their models of icy wanderers. But now Atlas seemed to add an unsettling pattern. 3 visitors in such short succession, and one of them aligned with Mars' coincidence was the obvious answer. Celestial mechanics is a dance of chance. Objects scatter from their stars, drift across light years, and eventually cut through the solar system. Mars happened to be near its path. Yet even in science, coincidence has a way of leaving shadows. The human mind, steeped in myth and meaning, cannot resist the weight of patterns. For thousands of years, the sight of Mars rising in red light had stirred fear and fascination. Now an alien fragment seemed to bow toward it, as if acknowledging the old symbolism. For scientists, the shock was not in superstition, but in the failure of prediction. They had believed interstellar objects would be vanishingly rare, perhaps appearing once in centuries. Yet within 3 years, 3 had revealed themselves, each one different, each one rewriting the models. Oumuamua had shown that such bodies could be rocky, dry, and strangely shaped. Borisov proved that some were rich in volatile ices, behaving like the comets known in the solar system. Atlas, however, blurred the line. Its instability, its flickering brightness suggested a fragile structure on the edge of dissolution. Was it the remnant of a shattered world, a fragment cast into space by the birth pangs of a distant system, or something else, something that could not be so neatly categorized? The scientific papers came quickly, flowing into preprint archives and journals. Teams analyzed its photometry, its orbital curve, its disintegration rate. Some argued that it was simply a weak comet that broke apart under solar heating. Others whispered of stranger origins, pointing out that such fragility might not survive interstellar flight unless the body had been unusually porous, like cosmic ash, drifting for aeons. The debates echoed those that had surrounded Oumuamua, when its odd acceleration had sparked speculation of artificial sails and alien technology. Few believed Atlas was anything but natural, but the unease remained. Mars gave the unease its symbol. In every diagram, its orbit was drawn in red, the foreign arc of Atlas cutting across. Not a meeting, but a gesture. The timing was too evocative to ignore. The ancient planet of war and omen, the 3rd visitor in as many years. The pattern that felt almost like a story. And so the scientific shock carried 2 layers. The first was empirical, that the universe was far more generous in casting its fragments across interstellar space than anyone had predicted. The second was philosophical, that these fragments seemed to arrive not in silence but in a sequence that stirred memory, myth, and fear. Was it chance or intention? The rational mind insists on chance, yet history reminds us that rational minds are still human, still woven from narrative. 1,000 years ago, priests would have declared it an omen. Today, scientists declare it coincidence. But deep down, in the quiet of their thoughts, some must wonder. If the cosmos is capable of scattering its messengers so widely, might it also be capable of aligning them in ways we do not yet understand? Oumuamua had already bent the laws of expectation. Atlas did not bring clarity. It brought a pattern, a shard unraveling near the orbit of Mars, as though the universe itself had chosen its symbols carefully. And with each passing visitor, the solar system seemed less like a closed sanctuary and more like a crossroads. A place where messages arrive even if their language is beyond us. The shock of Atlas was not a single moment. It was the accumulation of doubt, the flicker of light that refused stability, the path that brushed Mars, the sequence of 3 visitors where once there had been none. Each element on its own was explainable. Together they formed a picture that resisted comfort. Science thrives on explanation, but it also thrives on the unknown. And Atlas reminded humanity that the unknown is not distant, it is here, brushing the orbits of familiar worlds, unraveling in the light of the sun. For those who studied it, the questions would remain long after the fragments faded into invisibility. Was 3i Atlas merely a comet, fragile and doomed? Or was it something greater, a piece of interstellar narrative that science has not yet learned to read? The red planet lingered in its path, silent, unchanged as it had been for billions of years. Yet in that silence, humanity saw reflection. Was Mars only a coincidence of celestial geometry? Or was it chosen, a witness to the crossing of alien messengers? The shock lay not only in the data, but in the echo of the question, what if the universe is not random? What if the patterns we see are not illusions but fragments of a design too vast for human sight? Once the initial shock had settled, the work of science began in earnest. Every telescope that could see deep enough was turned toward 3i Atlas. In Hawaii, in Chile, in the Canary Islands, on mountaintops from Arizona to the Andes, observatories adjusted their nights. Requests for telescope time were submitted and approved with unusual urgency. Even satellites in orbit shifted their gaze. The visitor was fragile, fading, and precious. If it unraveled completely, its secrets would be lost forever. From the beginning, the object resisted simplicity. Spectral analysis, the delicate art of dissecting light into its colors, revealed its hidden chemistry. It carried volatile ices that evaporated easily in the sun's heat, more fragile than most comets catalogued within the solar system. Its dust seemed finer, almost ghostly, scattering sunlight in ways that gave its coma an odd translucence. Where Borisov had blazed confidently, with a tail bright enough to rival the best-known comets, Atlas appeared faint, fractured, and unstable. It looked less like a comet making its debut, and more like one on its deathbed. Yet the physics of its orbit drew even greater fascination. Astronomers fed its coordinates into orbital models, tracing the path backward and forward in time. The mathematics confirmed what instinct had already suggested. This was no child of the sun. Its hyperbolic trajectory meant it had drifted for untold millions of years through the galaxy, until chance brought it here. But chance alone did not seem to dictate its movements now. Gravitational nudges, tiny pulls from planets and the sun itself, reshaped its path in subtle but measurable ways. Each recalculation brought an unexpected detail. The red planet would not simply watch from a distance. Atlas was being pulled closer. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory began running high-fidelity simulations. So too did ESA's Near-Earth Object Coordination Center. Both agencies understood the stakes. Not because Mars itself was in danger, it had endured countless impacts over billions of years, but because this would be the first time in history that a confirmed interstellar fragment brushed so near another planet. It was an experiment written by nature. And for planetary scientists, the opportunity was extraordinary. The models varied in their details, but a haunting consistency emerged. Fragments from Atlas, already unstable and prone to shedding mass, could be nudged into paths that intersected Mars more directly. Small pieces, no larger than boulders, might rain upon its surface. In human history, meteors have always been messengers. But these would not be relics of the solar system. They would be alien stones carrying the chemistry of another sun, deposited on Martian soil. The implications were staggering. For decades, planetary protection protocols had focused on preventing Earth's microbes from contaminating Mars. Robotic explorers were sterilized with rigorous care. But here, nature itself seemed ready to seed the Martian surface with material from beyond the stars. Not biology, but chemistry, the frozen fingerprints of another world. A delivery that no spacecraft could replicate. Telescopic monitoring campaigns intensified. The Hubble Space Telescope contributed images, though the visitor's faintness tested its instruments. Ground-based arrays like the Very Large Telescope in Chile captured spectra in near-infrared light, teasing out the signatures of molecules buried in the dust. Hints of carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide emerged, along with faint traces of water ice sublimating into gas. The composition seemed ordinary in one sense, the familiar ingredients of comets, and yet because it came from another system, each molecule carried a different isotopic fingerprint. Ratios of hydrogen to deuterium, carbon to nitrogen, oxygen to carbon. These subtle markers spoke of chemistry shaped in another stellar nursery. For the first time, scientists could compare the building blocks of another planetary system not through distant starlight, but through matter drifting within reach. The data came piecemeal, each observation a thread. But as the threads were woven together, a larger picture took shape. Atlas was fragile, unstable, and yet strangely generous. In its disintegration, it revealed not only what it was, but what it had carried across the void. A message written in atoms. A message the solar system had no choice but to receive. The alignment with Mars became more unsettling as calculations grew more precise. Each gravitational tug, each shedding of mass, altered its orbit just enough to shift its trajectory. By the time the models stabilized, the conclusion was clear. The visitor would pass within a cosmic hair's breadth of the red planet's orbital path. A near miss on astronomical scales, but close enough to raise a question that could not be ignored. What if even a handful of fragments struck Mars? The thought electrified the planetary science community. On Earth, interstellar material would burn in the atmosphere, leaving only fleeting meteors. On Mars, with its thin air, fragments could survive intact, embedding themselves into the soil. Future missions might one day collect them, unwittingly holding in their hands the first physical samples of another star system. It was a possibility so rare that it seemed like fiction, and yet the simulations gave it weight. The philosophical undertones deepened with each new model. If these fragments truly reached Mars, was it only coincidence, or was the solar system being written into a larger narrative, one where the red planet stood as a stage for cosmic messengers? Ancient cultures had looked at Mars and seen the face of a god. Now modern science looked at Mars and saw the chance for interstellar material to fall upon its surface. Different ages, different languages, but the same instinct. Mars as a place of meaning. Even the numbers carried poetry. The predicted distance of closest approach, measured in millions of kilometers, was nothing in astronomical terms. A whisper compared to the vastness of space. And yet in that whisper meaning gathered. A planet of war. A visitor unraveling, fragments drifting like sparks toward alien soil. As the weeks passed, the international effort grew. Teams coordinated observations across time zones, handing off the target from east to west as Earth rotated. Astronomers in small observatories joined with those commanding giant instruments. Each wanted to catch a glimpse before the visitor faded. It was a race against time, for the sun's glare threatened to swallow Atlas as it drew closer to perihelion, and its own instability threatened to erase it altogether. Already the comet showed signs of breaking into multiple pieces, its nucleus splitting under thermal stress. Some predicted it would vanish entirely before the Mars encounter. Others insisted fragments would survive, carried onward by the same cosmic trajectory. NASA's simulations grew more elaborate, incorporating not just gravity, but also non-gravitational forces. Jets of gas spurting from beneath the surface of the comet acted like thrusters, altering its motion unpredictably. The models had to be updated constantly, each new observation feeding into revised predictions. Yet the trend remained the same. Mars lingered uncomfortably close. At ESA, teams considered the implications for future missions. Could orbiters detect any fragmentary impacts on Mars? Could rovers years from now stumble upon alien stones and not recognize their origin? The possibility ignited quiet debates in conference calls and preprints. The data was still raw, but the speculation grew. Mars might soon hold within its dust not only the remnants of its own history, but relics carried from another star. To those watching, the realization was sobering. The Atlas was not a passive traveler. It was not a silent stone drifting past on a random arc. It was dynamic, volatile, and alive in its instability. It interacted with the solar system, shedding fragments, responding to gravity, altering its own course through the jets of gas bursting from within. It was a participant in the celestial drama, not a bystander. And its path through Mars's orbit made it a character with lines still unscripted. For humanity, the deeper investigation offered no easy answers. Only layers of complexity, each more mysterious than the last. Science thrives on such complexity. It builds meaning from uncertainty, carving knowledge out of silence. But even as astronomers refined their models and spectra, the larger truth lingered like a shadow. The solar system was open. It was porous. It was vulnerable to the touch of other suns. In that vulnerability lay possibility. Perhaps in the future, fragments like Atlas would not only fall on Mars, but on Earth itself, leaving behind traces in ice or stone. Perhaps some had already fallen, their interstellar signatures buried beneath layers of geology waiting to be found. For now, the focus remained on the fragile visitor unraveling near Mars, but the lesson stretched far beyond it. The galaxy was not a distant abstraction. It was present, embodied in a faint, flickering object tracked night after night by telescopes across the world. As the final simulations converged, a quiet realization spread among the scientific community. This was not the story of a comet merely passing by. It was the story of interaction. A visitor crossing paths with a planet steeped in human meaning. A fragment carrying chemistry from another sun, offering itself to study, perhaps even to contact with Martian soil. The discovery was more than observation. It was participation in a cosmic exchange that had been taking place for billions of years. Unseen, unnoticed. Now, for the first time, humanity was aware. And awareness changes everything. The visitor did not remain whole. As the weeks passed, telescopes recorded its disintegration. First, faint plumes of dust appeared in the coma, trailing behind like threads of smoke. Then came larger disruptions. The nucleus fractured into distinct pieces, drifting along the same orbital curve yet pulling apart under the weight of momentum. It was as if the object was unraveling in real time, breaking into a constellation of fragments that stretched across the void. What began as one messenger became many. Each fragment carried its own orbit, but all traced the same general path, a widening stream of alien debris sweeping toward the region of space occupied by Mars. For scientists, the sight was mesmerizing. This was not a single body brushing the solar system. It was an entire procession, an interstellar convoy breaking apart in silence, scattering material that had been forged under another sun. The question now shifted from, what is it, to what will happen when it passes? Mars, with its thin atmosphere and fragile climate, stood directly in the path of possibility. Unlike Earth, it did not possess the protective shield of dense air to burn away incoming debris. On Earth, fragments of Atlas would have flared as meteors, vanishing before they reached the ground. But on Mars, survival was likely. Even boulders no larger than a human fist could strike the surface intact, embedding themselves into the dust. The scientific implications were profound. Every meteorite that fell from Atlas would be a courier of chemistry from another star system. Each impact would seed Martian soil with material older than the solar system itself. Perhaps such exchanges had already happened countless times in the past, unnoticed and unstudied. But this time was different. This time humanity was watching. The thought unsettled planetary scientists. Mars's climate system is delicate, balanced precariously between frozen deserts and fleeting hints of liquid water. Even small perturbations can have lasting effects. A cluster of interstellar fragments striking the surface could inject energy into the atmosphere, stir dust storms, or deposit exotic material into the regolith. Not enough to alter the fate of the planet on grand scales, but enough to remind humanity that celestial events leave fingerprints. The planet was no longer just a witness. It was a participant in a drama written by interstellar chance. Yet beyond science, a deeper question stirred. Why did Mars, of all planets, seem to carry the weight of these encounters? The first two visitors, Oumuamua and Borisov, had swept through the inner solar system without symbolic entanglement. But Atlas, the third, tied itself to the orbit of Mars in a way that seemed almost deliberate. It was coincidence, the language of orbital mechanics insisted, and yet the coincidence echoed too strongly against the backdrop of human history. For as long as humanity has looked upward, Mars has been a planet of meaning. The ancients saw its crimson glow and named it for gods of war and omen. Babylonian astronomers called it Nergal, the bringer of destruction. To the Greeks, it was Ares. To the Romans, Mars, patron of battle and conquest. Even in Chinese tradition, it was the fire star, a celestial warning of chaos. Every culture that studied the heavens assigned to Mars a character of violence and destiny. Now, in the age of science, that mythology was reawakened by strangeness. A fragment from another star breaking apart in view of telescopes, scattering debris into the path of the war god's planet. The symbolism was too strong to ignore. A narrative older than history seemed to stir again, not in superstition but in data. Philosophy entered the conversation, quietly, in the minds of those who studied the unfolding mystery. Was this truly coincidence, or did it point to something deeper? Not in the sense of agency, not in the language of intention, but in the suggestion that the cosmos might possess patterns beyond the reach of probability. If the universe casts fragments into space, billions upon billions of them, could some be guided, not by will but by gravity and time, toward worlds that matter? Could interstellar objects in their silent migrations act as tests of planetary systems, probing their resilience, scattering their seeds? The thought grew unsettling the more it was considered. Mars was the planet most like Earth, the only other terrestrial world where liquid water might once have flowed in abundance. It was the planet of greatest human interest, the next frontier of exploration. And now it seemed it was the chosen recipient of fragments from beyond. Was this only geometry, or was it something like narrative, written in the motions of stone and ice? Scientists avoided the language of destiny, but speculation has always followed discovery. Some argued that interstellar objects could indeed play a role in the evolution of planets. By delivering volatile ices or exotic organic compounds, they might alter surface chemistry in subtle ways. Others countered that the flux of such objects was too rare to matter. Yet rare does not mean meaningless. Sometimes rarity amplifies meaning. A single impact carrying molecules unknown to Earth or Mars could alter the course of planetary history. The fragments of Atlas became symbols of possibility, each one a question hurled across light years, each one a test for the thin air and silent deserts of Mars. Would they burn in shallow streaks of light? Would they bury themselves in the regolith, to be uncovered by future explorers? Or would they pass unremarked, fading into invisibility? Another reminder of how much is lost to silence. As observations continued, astronomers tracked the fragments with increasing difficulty. Their brightness was erratic, their paths diverging. Atlas had become not one visitor, but many, and each piece was harder to follow. The Mars encounter loomed closer, yet the details grew hazier. Would the planet truly receive alien debris, or would the entire procession dissolve into dust before crossing its orbit? No one could say with certainty. What remained undeniable was the escalation of the mystery. A simple cometary visitor had become a disintegrating stream. A passive trajectory had become an interaction with a world of meaning. And a fragment of interstellar ice had become a question about the nature of planetary fate. For the ancients, Mars was a warning. For modern science, Mars was a laboratory. But in the story of Atlas, Mars became something else. A bridge between myth and data, a reminder that even in the age of telescopes and supercomputers, the universe still speaks in riddles, and so the mystery deepened. Not because the science failed, but because the science revealed more than it could answer. Why had Atlas broken apart so dramatically? Why did its fragments sweep past Mars and not some other planet? Why had 3 interstellar objects appeared in such rapid succession after millennia of silence? Coincidence? That was the safe answer. Yet coincidence does not quiet the human imagination. In the flicker of fragments across the night sky, in the crimson witness of Mars, humanity could not help but hear something else. Not a message in words, not a deliberate signal, but the suggestion of being tested, of being reminded that planets too exist within the tides of the galaxy. Mars, silent and unchanging, bore witness once more. Its thin air waited. Its deserts waited. And as Atlas unraveled across the heavens, the question lingered like a shadow. Are interstellar objects merely wanderers? Or are they trials, subtle and relentless, shaping the fates of worlds that stand in their path? The unraveling of 3i Atlas left behind more than fragments. It left questions, each one circling like an orbit of its own. Why had it broken apart so violently? Why had its trajectory brushed the path of Mars? Why had 3 interstellar visitors appeared in such quick succession after millennia of silence? Science, as always, began with the simplest answers. Astrophysical explanations emerged first. Atlas was fragile, its nucleus weak and porous. As it approached the sun, solar radiation gnawed at its surface. Ices sublimated, venting streams of gas that fractured the body from within. Its structural weakness, long concealed by the cold of interstellar space, had been exposed by the warmth of our star. What followed was inevitable. The visitor cracked and splintered, scattering shards along its trajectory. Gravitational tides played their part as well. When a fragile body moves through the pull of a massive planet or star, even tiny differences in force can stretch and tear it apart. Astronomers recalled Comet Shoemaker-Levy 9, torn into dozens of pieces by Jupiter's immense gravity, before slamming into the giant planet in 1994. Atlas had not passed so close to Jupiter or Saturn, but the principle was the same. Solar tides, reinforced by the subtle nudges of planetary fields, worked together with thermal stress. The result was a cosmic fracture, a natural death throw. The alignment with Mars, astrophysicists argued, was nothing more than geometry. Objects scatter through the galaxy in every direction. Some pass near Earth, others near the outer giants, others fade into the Kuiper Belt unseen. Mars happened to lie along the path of Atlas at the moment of its disintegration. Coincidence. Statistical inevitability in a universe of endless motion. And yet, not everyone was satisfied with this explanation. Coincidence may silence probability, but it does not silence imagination, and imagination has always been the twin of science. Speculative theories began to ripple outward. Some spoke of Atlas as a messenger, not merely in name but in purpose. Its fragility, its strange behavior, and its uncanny alignment with Mars stirred thoughts that stretched beyond natural cause. Could such objects be more than accidents? Could they be tools? In the silence of the cosmos, might another civilization choose to send fragments rather than signals, scattering them as probes or seeds across interstellar space? The idea was not new. In the 20th century, Francis Crick, co-discoverer of the DNA double helix, entertained the possibility of directed panspermia, the deliberate seeding of life across planets by advanced civilizations. If life arose in one place, it might not remain there. It could be spread, like spores on the wind, across light years, not through spaceships but through cometary messengers, fragments of ice and rock carrying the raw chemistry of biology, hurled outward as ambassadors of life. Atlas, with its disintegrating body and volatile ices, seemed almost to embody that vision, each shard a capsule of chemistry from another system, each potential impact on Mars an experiment, whether deliberate or not. Was this coincidence, or was the red planet being seeded, tested as a cradle for alien material? Science remained cautious. There was no evidence of biology in its spectra. No amino acids were detected, no molecular chains suggesting life's complexity. But the absence of evidence was not evidence of absence. Perhaps the message was not alive but chemical, a test of planetary receptivity, rather than of direct delivery. The question pressed further: if civilizations existed elsewhere, would they not seek to communicate? Humanity had long looked for radio signals, laser pulses, and deliberate broadcasts. But what if the truest communication was physical? What if the cosmos itself was the medium, comets and fragments its vocabulary? To cast a fragment across light years was to send a piece of one's world into another. Perhaps that was the oldest form of message, and here lay the unease. Stephen Hawking, before his death, had warned of first contact. He cautioned that humanity should be wary of inviting attention from alien civilizations. The history of encounters on Earth was rarely kind to the weaker party. If intelligent life existed beyond, its goals might not align with ours. Yet what if contact was not sought through messages, but through encounters like Atlas, fragments drifting into planetary systems, silently intruding, never asking permission? If so, humanity's first contact had already happened, not with words but with stone and ice. Even Einstein's relativity carried a philosophical echo. In his equations, time and space are not fixed. Every trajectory is shaped by curvature, by gravity, by the bending of spacetime itself. An interstellar fragment wandering into the solar system is not entirely random. Its path is sculpted by the invisible hands of relativity. The alignment with Mars, then, was not meaningless. It was the product of cosmic geometry, the way space and time intersected in that particular moment. Chance, yes, but chance written into the fabric of the universe. To some, this made the encounter more profound, not less. If every orbit is shaped by gravity, then every coincidence is also an expression of law. The brush of Atlas with Mars was not guided by intention, but neither was it void of meaning. It was meaning of another kind. Not narrative meaning, but physical. The kind of meaning that emerges when natural law produces an outcome so striking that it echoes human myth. And so, theories multiplied like the fragments of Atlas itself. Natural breakup, thermal stress, coincidence of orbits, or deliberate seeding of worlds. Perhaps all were true at once, depending on the frame of mind. The scientific community remained disciplined. Papers cataloged spectra, orbits, and disintegration rates. Simulations plotted fragment paths with precision. Conferences debated the data with caution. But outside the lines of journals, in the quiet of personal reflection, even scientists allowed themselves to wonder. The timing, the pattern, the symbolism, could it all be dismissed so easily? Humanity has always lived between science and myth. Oumuamua challenged physics by accelerating as if pushed by unseen forces. Borisov confirmed the reality of icy wanderers from other stars. Atlas fractured near Mars, scattering fragments into the planet's path. Each event was real, measurable, and scientific. And yet, each carried a shadow of meaning that extended beyond numbers. The universe does not explain itself. It only presents. Objects appear, fade, and pass on. Meaning is left for the minds that witness. Was Atlas a messenger or a coincidence? A dying comet or a directed probe? A seeding fragment or a meaningless stone? In truth, it was all of these. To the astrophysicist, it was a fragile nucleus torn apart by solar heat. To the philosopher, it was a riddle of coincidence and narrative. To the dreamer, it was a messenger from another sun. And to Mars, silent in its orbit, it was simply a visitor passing by, leaving behind fragments that might one day be discovered beneath its dust. Theories and speculations are not answers. They are mirrors reflecting human imagination back upon itself. Atlas, in its strange behavior, offered no explanations. It only raised questions, and perhaps that was the true message. Not clarity, but mystery. Not certainty, but wonder. A reminder that even in the age of supercomputers and spacecraft, the cosmos retains its silence. A silence broken not by words, but by the passage of alien stone unraveling near a world of war. The universe had spoken, if only in riddles. And humanity, as always, was left to interpret the echo. The unraveling of 3I Atlas may have slipped beyond sight, its fragments fading into the dark. But science did not let go. Its echoes are still being traced, like ripples spreading long after a stone has struck water. Across the Earth, observatories continued to search for the faintest signatures of what remained. Even fragments no larger than mountains of dust could leave trails of light when they passed across the sky. Astronomers extended their campaigns, scanning the regions of space near Mars's orbit, hoping to catch one final glimpse of alien material before it was lost forever. Most images revealed only silence, but every so often, faint streaks appeared, short-lived smudges of brightness, perhaps remnants, perhaps only the noise of the detector. Each one was catalogued, measured, tested against orbital models. The line between certainty and speculation blurred, yet the effort continued. For even the smallest fragment of Atlas, if traced, could tell humanity more about the chemistry of another star system than decades of starlight. Attention turned, too, toward Mars itself. The planet, silent and indifferent, had become an unwitting detector. If Atlas had shed fragments along its path, then Mars was the screen upon which those fragments might leave marks. Its thin atmosphere, barely a whisper compared to Earth's, offered little protection. Meteors would strike deeper, survive longer, and scatter debris upon the desert surface. Rovers wandered across its plains, curiosity, perseverance, still alive and searching. Orbiters circled above, MAVEN, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, the European Trace Gas Orbiter, all bristling with instruments sensitive to the delicate shifts in air, light, and dust. None had been designed to hunt for interstellar debris, yet each could become in its own way an indirect witness. A sudden spike in atmospheric ionization, a thin streak across the Martian sky, an unexplained chemical trace in the soil. These would not announce themselves. They would whisper, hidden within broader data streams. But scientists began to look more closely. Every anomaly became suspect. Every unexplained reading carried with it the possibility that it was a relic of Atlas. The search for interstellar visitors expanded beyond Mars as well. Instruments of extraordinary sensitivity were already being prepared, designed not just to see distant galaxies, but to notice faint wanderers slipping between stars. The James Webb Space Telescope, with its infrared eyes, offered humanity the ability to detect the cold glow of comets long before they entered the inner solar system. Though Webb's schedule is filled with the study of exoplanets and early galaxies, astronomers knew it could turn its attention closer if needed. Its power lies not only in seeing far, but in seeing faint, and interstellar objects are faintest of all. On Earth, the Vera C. Rubin Observatory neared completion in Chile. Its instrument, the Legacy Survey of Space and Time, promised to map the entire sky every few nights, capturing the restless dance of asteroids, comets, and stars. For the first time, humanity would have a tool capable of catching interstellar objects in numbers. Where once they appeared as singular anomalies, Rubin would reveal them as a population, not rare miracles but recurring messengers, threading through the solar system on paths written long ago. With these instruments, a new era began. No longer would humanity rely on accident or luck. The arrival of interstellar objects could be predicted, catalogued, and studied in detail. Each one would be measured not in fleeting glances but in systematic campaigns. Together they would build a library of alien fragments, a record of worlds beyond reach, delivered to the doorstep of the sun. But alongside the science, another thought grew. If such objects were not only frequent but fragile, if they broke apart as Atlas had, then their fragments could interact with planets in ways not yet considered. Planetary defense, long focused on Earth, began to ask a new question. What about Mars? On Earth, asteroid defense programs scan for threats that might cause extinction-level impacts. On Mars, the concern is different. The thin atmosphere and open surface are more vulnerable to smaller objects. A cluster of interstellar fragments could stir its air, raise storms, or deposit chemistry in ways that future explorers would encounter. For robotic missions, the risk is real. A fragment striking near a rover or lander could damage or bury instruments. For future human missions, the threat would be greater still. Mars, long imagined as humanity's second home, could also become the first place where alien debris directly influences survival. Agencies began to incorporate such possibilities into simulations. What would happen if an interstellar fragment unseen collided with the thin metal skin of a habitat dome? What if a shard of alien chemistry altered the measurements of a scientific instrument, misleading conclusions about Martian soil? These were not fanciful fears. They were practical questions. For the first time, planetary defense extended beyond Earth. Mars had entered the equation. Yet within this preparation lay something larger. The tools humanity builds to defend, to detect, and to explore are not only instruments of safety, they are instruments of philosophy. Every new telescope is not just a machine. It is a question made visible. Webb asks about the first light of the universe. Rubin asks about the restless motions of the sky. Rovers ask about the possibility of life. And now, in their own ways, each asks about interstellar messengers. Not whether they exist, we know they do, but why they come. And what they bring. The search continues, night after night. Telescopes watch. Orbiters circle. Rovers wander. All are hunters, even if they do not yet know what they are hunting. Somewhere in the streams of data, in the faintest flickers of light, the story of Atlas continues to echo. Perhaps fragments still drift unseen toward Mars. Perhaps they have already fallen, waiting to be found by wheels of metal or the hands of future explorers. Perhaps the next visitor is already on its way, crossing the gulf between stars, carrying with it another fragment of mystery. The lesson of Atlas is clear. The solar system is not isolated. It is open to the tides of the galaxy. Interstellar objects arrive without warning, sometimes intact, sometimes unraveling, always carrying with them the chemistry of other suns. And with each arrival, humanity is forced to look not only outward, but inward. What does it mean to live in a system that is not sealed? What does it mean to be a species that cannot control what drifts across the void into its skies? The scientific tools built today are not merely instruments of knowledge. They are acts of preparation. Preparation for the next messenger. Preparation for the next moment of shock, when the sky reveals something that should not be here yet is. Preparation for the possibility that such encounters may shape not only our understanding, but our destiny. As Atlas fades into memory, its shadow remains. Not in the fragments which may never be found, but in the vigilance it inspired. A vigilance now embodied in telescopes that scan relentlessly, in orbiters that measure tirelessly, in rovers that explore patiently. The cosmos has sent its message, and humanity finally is learning how to listen. Mars has always been more than a planet. It is a mirror, a distant world whose deserts reflect back the questions humanity asks of itself. It is the planet upon which ancient myths projected war, fear, and destiny. It is the planet upon which modern science projects hope, exploration, and survival. It is the stage upon which humanity rehearses its future. And yet, before human feet ever touch its soil, Mars has been touched by something else, not by intention but by accident. Not by spacecraft, but by fragments from another sun. 3I Atlas, unraveling into pieces, brushed its path against the red planet, as if testing its resilience before humanity arrives. In this collision of symbolism and science, Mars became more than an objective. It became a participant in a cosmic dialogue humanity does not yet understand. For scientists, the paradox deepens with each observation. The more carefully interstellar visitors are studied, the less certain their meaning becomes. Oumuamua accelerated without a visible engine, defying explanation. Borisov blazed like a comet, familiar yet alien. Atlas shattered, scattering fragments across Mars's orbit, neither stable nor predictable. Patterns emerge, but they resist clarity. Instead of answers, the universe offers questions. Instead of order, it offers mystery. The paradox is cruelly elegant. Knowledge grows, certainty recedes, and so the human mind is drawn into the oldest meditation of all, chance versus intention. Are these visitors nothing more than wanderers? Fragments of planetary birth and death flung outward by chaos, carried by galactic tides, crossing our system by coincidence? Or are they something more? Whispers from other stars, not in language but in presence. Objects that remind humanity of its place in a galaxy that does not ask permission to intrude. Einstein's laws assure that nothing here is without cause. Gravity shapes every curve, relativity bends every path. Even chance is written into the fabric of physics. Yet within that inevitability, the human imagination searches for meaning. It asks whether the brush of Atlas with Mars was random geometry or the trace of a larger design. Perhaps the answer lies not in either but in both, chance that feels like intention that hides within chance. The cosmos, after all, has always spoken in paradox. Mars now carries the weight of this paradox. It is the planet of human ambition, the frontier we hope to colonize, the world upon which we may someday build new homes. But before humanity arrives, the planet is tested, not by storms of its own, not by the dust devils that prowl its deserts, but by fragments from another sun, debris that falls without invitation, seeding its soil with alien chemistry, as if rehearsing the meeting of worlds before humans can stage it themselves. Mars becomes the experiment. Mars becomes the witness. Mars becomes the mirror, reflecting both science and myth at once. And perhaps that is the final unease. For centuries, humanity has assumed that if the universe wished to send a message, it would send it to Earth. Signals searched for by radio telescopes, lights across the void, aimed at the blue planet teeming with life. But what if the message is not meant for Earth? What if the messengers arrive not in our skies, but in the skies of Mars? What if the question has never been about us at all, but about the planet next door? In the stillness of interplanetary space, Mars glows faintly red. Its deserts lie untouched, silent beneath a thin veil of atmosphere. Yet it waits as it has always waited. It waits for explorers, for colonists, for dreamers. It waits, perhaps, for more fragments from beyond. The war god's planet stands as a sentinel, bearing witness to alien visitors before humanity can claim it for itself. And so the reflection deepens. Perhaps these messengers are not accidents. Perhaps they are not warnings. Perhaps they are questions, questions written in the orbits of stone and ice, questions posed not to Earth but to Mars, questions that ask whether life in its fragile persistence belongs only to one planet, or whether it belongs to many. The universe offers no answer. It offers only silence, broken by the passing of messengers that arrive without explanation and depart without farewell. Yet in their silence lies a haunting thought. Perhaps these messengers are not asking about Earth at all. Perhaps they are asking about Mars. And as the red planet glows in the night sky, humanity is left to wonder. When the next visitor arrives, who will it truly be speaking to?